New Balance Hoops is changing the game with a roster built for the future. Darius Garland, Tyrese Maxey, and Zach LaVine push the pace, while Cooper Flagg is set to be the next #1 pick. Cam Brink is raising the bar for women's basketball, proving that impact goes beyond the court. Whether it's the Hezzy Low V2s for quick cuts, the two-way V5 for all-round play, or the Kawhi 4 for those who never stop climbing, New Balance Hoops makes shoes built for every player. Visit newbalance.com/basketball to explore more.
At RX Bar, they believe in simple nutrition without the BS. That's why they said no to artificial ingredients and yes to deliver intentional, transparent nutrition. Try their original 12-gram protein bar, the nut butter and oat bar, or minis. RX Bar, the proud sponsor of No BS. Use code RXBAR on rxbar.com for 25% off. Subject to full terms and conditions and to change. Valid until September 30, 2025, and may not be combined with other offers. See rxbar.com for full details and limitations.
Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial pound law, that is pound 529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. A warmer brotherly low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the Easton Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by our good friend Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. We're going to be chatting with him about what he's noticed the last few weeks in college basketball, things that are not working out, the landscape of the ACC. We'll take a look at a few games for Monday as well, and sort of the sorts of home teams that he's looking to back and not back as well. So that's going to be a fun chat with him. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at JNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Sunday, one that wrapped up earlier, I'm sure, than many would like, as the latest tip time was 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, so take note of that, NCAA, but let's take a look at everything that we saw in college basketball on Sunday, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
West Virginia goes on the road. They get the job done against Colorado. They're now 9-6 against the spread, and they get a 78-70 win. No Tucker DeVries once again for West Virginia, but they go 8 of 24 from three-point range, and they had Javon Small come up big, 26 points, and Joseph Yusufu, he had like 8 straight points in the back half of the second half too. He had 18 points in this one for Colorado, 24 of 30 at the free throw line, but lost that turnover battle 14-7. That was costly for them, as Julian Hammond had 23 points, but not a lot else from a lot of other guys. So they go down in a little bit of a fiery heap, and Southern Indiana, for me, was a very profitable team early on during the season, but we've seen that tumble downward a little bit as Little Rock. They do find a way to get the job done, this by a count of 78-58, as for Southern Indiana, they go just 9 of 31 from three-point range, a little bit banged up right now, as some of their top scorers have been in and out of the fold, mainly Jalen Randall, and for this Little Rock team, 8 of 14 from three-point range. They've actually been a very good under team thus far this season, so that was a fun one for UAB. It's been a little bit of a tumultuous season for them against the spread, but they do find a way against Florida Atlantic to be able to get the job done. 81-76 final in this one, as for UAB, they go 5 of 13 from three-point range. Florida Atlantic 8 of 22 from distance, but when the UAB was able to win this game, they won the turnover battle by a count of 11-6, as for Yaxel Lendeborg, he was able to do a solid job being able to supply the team 22 points, 10 rebounds, and I talk about UAB being up and down against the spread, now 8-8 against the spread, so things have been able to normalize there. For Florida Atlantic, they actually win the rebound battle by a count of 46-40, but when you lose that turnover battle, and when you go 10 of 15 at the free throw line, while UAB, they're able to get to the free throw line 22 times, albeit they only made 14 of them, that's going to be a little bit costly. Out there in the Big Ten, it was all about overs, as Purdue has played all but one of their Big Ten games to the over thus far, 104-68. They take down Nebraska. Nebraska 6 of 27 from three-point range. Purdue, 19 out of 33. Miles Colvin off the bench, 14 points. He sinks 4 of his 8 threes. Braden Smith just 8 points but 14 assists. CJ Cox was able to throw in their 23 points. Just complete and utter domination out there. And then we saw Michigan State go on the road. They were able to get the job done as well. This by kind of 78-68. It's been a pretty cold 3-point shooting team for Michigan State all season long, but they made 4 of the 8 that they took on Sunday, and Northwestern, well, they only made 5 of their 25, so a little bit of an issue there. By the way, Northwestern now 10 overs to 6 unders for them thus far this season. And for Michigan State, 20 of 27 at the free throw line. No real headline score. Jaden Akins led the way with 14 points, but a lot of just guys doing their role and being able to protect the ball. They won the turnover battle 12-11. They won the rebound battle 37-30. You also saw a very nice domination out there in the NEC from teams playing against Chicago State. As Stone Hill, they do get a win by a count of 68-52. And the NEC has been a very good underconference over the last few seasons in general. Wagner being the main of them, 1 over 11 unders and a push thus far this season. But for Stone Hill, they were able to get a bit of offense going in this one. They go 9 of 26 from 3, and for Chicago State, they had 13 turnovers and 15 made buckets, and they lost the rebound battle 31-27. Just a pit of sadness for them in this one. Even though Wagner is by far that top under team out there in the NEC, you still have a few other teams that have been able to do a pretty rock solid job cashing some unders, like Central Connecticut. 11 unders of 4 overs for them. They do lose at home though to Long Island. Long Island 54-52 winners. Game was a slog as both teams had 10 turnovers in this one. Central Connecticut actually wins the rebound battle, but just 5 of 17 from 3 and 17 out of 50 from the floor. Meanwhile, Long Island, they were able to go 4 of 13 from distance. They do find a way to persevere and get the job done. Wagner was actually off on this Sunday, so we didn't get to see them in action, but Lemoyne has been your lone over team out there in the NEC. 11 overs to 6 unders, and they took it to Mercyhurst by a count of 79-63 as they went 6 of 19 from 3-point range. Team is out with a lot of injuries, but aside for Owens, A.J. Dantzler back in the fold for them, so that's going to be helping them out. And Fairleigh Dickinson has actually been one of your top against the spread teams in all of college basketball. They fall down just a peg, though. They're now 12-3 against the spread as St. Francis of Pennsylvania goes on the road, and they win outright by a kind of 75-71, as this was a game that St. Francis of Pennsylvania had very firm control of late. They were actually up by like 9 points with 90 seconds remaining. Very nearly blew it, but go 9 of 21 from 3-point range. Fairleigh Dickinson just 6 of 30 from the outside, and for St. Francis of Pennsylvania, you were able to get 18 quality points out of Riley Parker to be able to get the job done, so that was a pretty fun one. And you also saw a lot of Metro Atlantic action as well, and out there in the Metro Atlantic, you've had Manhattan be one of the top over teams in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, they entered into Friday with just 1 under all season long. Back-to-back unders for them, though, as Merrimack, the Merrymen, put them in some shekels, 69-62 the final. You do get the cover if you're Manhattan, though. They were catching 7.5 in this game as Bryant Enteminu led the way with 21 points, so it was the old Merrymen being able to get the job done. And how about Mount St. Mary's and the fact that they are now 11-4 against the spread? They go out there on Sunday and they get it done against Sacred Heart, this by kind of 73-71. Spread was right around about 3.5, so they do not cover this game. But for Mount St. Mary's, they've been able to overcome their turnover woes by shooting pretty well from 3-point range, as you had Carmelo Pacheco be able to go 4 of 8 from distance, and for Sacred Heart, they do go 12 of 38 from distance. They also did win the turnover battle by a kind of 19-11, but they lost the rebound battle 38-34. 3 separate guys for this Mount St. Mary's team were able to supply 7+ rebounds in this one. Ryder has been one of your lesser against the spread teams thus far this season, but they do go on the road. They take down Niagara as a little bit of an underdog, 68-65 the final. TJ Weeks, well, he did not look weak in this one. He was able to give the team a double-figure amount of points, led the way to be able to get the job done for them, and it's been an off-putting season thus far for Iona. They do cover the 1.5, just barely, as for Iona, they had the lead throughout much of this game. They relinquish it late. They were down 5 points with about a minute remaining, and somehow, someway, they lose this game by 1 thanks to missed free throw, 63-62. That game had a bunch of shenanigans in there, so always some good, clean family fun when that is happening. And out there in the Metro Atlantic, well, there's no bigger outlier than the overs that we've been seeing for Manhattan. We have been seeing Quinnipiac playing quite a few unders, 10 unders to just 6 overs thus far this season. So that one has been of note. Didn't have a lot of ranked teams that were in action on Sunday, but you did have Michigan in action, and they took it to Washington. This by kind of 91-75. They're able to cover that one. As for Washington, they actually do go 9-21 from 3-point range. You had in this one a nice performance from Grade Sport, 23 points, 11 rebounds. But for Michigan, they win the battle on glass 36-34. They actually win the turnover battle as well. And for Michigan, 11 of 29 from 3 with Nobari Burnett chipping in there 16 points. You also had Oregon go on the road. They get the win, no cover, but they get the win against Penn State by a count of 82-81. And we have been seeing a lot of, shall we say, overwhelming results out there in the Big Ten thus far this season. And really, most of these teams have played more overs than unders in Big Ten play thus far. As Oregon, 8 of 22 from 3-point range. We're trailing by 7 points with 3+ minutes remaining, but Jack Shichelset is able to chip in there 17 points. For Penn State, they go 7 of 19 from 3-point range. And for Penn State, they won the rebound battle by a count of 36-29, but also for Oregon, they did find a way to be able to get things going. For Nate Biddle, was able to give you 11 points, and then off the bench, Keithon Bartholomew along with KJ Evans were able to combine for 25 points. So they do find a way to persevere and get the job done on what was an interesting Sunday in college basketball that also saw Chattanooga be able to get a win and cover. That was one of the games that was supposed to take place on Saturday, 91-66, all over VMI in that one. And what we are all over is taking a look at some of the trends that we are seeing in college basketball. And if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, nothing overly glaring. We're starting to see a few more overs, but that said, Sunday was a little bit more of an underwhelming day. 166 unders to 162 overs. Meanwhile, the favorites have gone 168, 163, and 2 against the spread over the last 7 days. And overall for the season, it has been more of an underdog season. 1374, 1342, and 38 against the spread for underdogs. So hitting at a little bit north of 58.5%, and the overs have a very slim lead on unders, 1,357 overs to 1,355 under. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now. And that's what we all got on Sunday. Now let's take a look at Monday's games, take a look at landscape of the ACC and some of the home teams that our good friend Rob Donaldson is and is not looking to bet on. That's up next right here on Clips Good Seats with myself, Craig Peters, and now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Clips Good Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man. It's Rob Donaldson. Does a great job with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He's been grinding through these cards, doing an amazing job of being able to spot some winners. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at RobDFB altogether. And Rob, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Greg. And, we just had a phenomenal Saturday of college hoops, and we're getting deeper into the season now where a lot of these games are having long-lasting impacts for the outlook of a lot of these seasons, and that just means we have some really great fodder to talk about in this episode.
Oh, we certainly do. And what have been some of your big takeaways from the last week or so? Because it's been interesting to take a look at the way that overs and unders have been hitting, because a lot of things have been pretty 50-50. We saw a few more unders coming through in college basketball on Saturday, but there haven't been a lot of, and I air quotes here, trends that I've been noticing. It's been a lot of just everything being on its own entity and its own basis.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this in the offseason, but this is the perfect year to kind of go outside the box with your thinking because of all the conference realignment, because of the NIL, and because of transfer portal just being so ultimately prevalent in the sport now. And you have some crazy travel spots that you never would have seen. You have some looking teams and coaches that were on the move this offseason as well. So if you're one to latch on to one kind of trend that you have been in past years, it just might be moot at this point. And so some of my takeaways early on, thinking outside the box was definitely a great move. And I think what we're also seeing is a clear defining line between the tiers of how good is a team, how great is a team, who is the best in the entire country. And I feel like those lines are starting to get more and more clear as the weeks go by.
Absolutely. And what have you been making out of a lot of these teams that have a newer coach? Because I was mentioning this coming into the season that I felt like a lot of these teams would struggle early, but be able to surge a little bit more late. And we're seeing a little bit of better effort from Louisville, in my opinion. Michigan has been looking very rock solid. They took it to Washington, got the cover on Sunday there. And I feel like these first and second year coaches are really starting to find their sea legs. And those teams with so many transfers are starting to be able to rise up, and they're starting to be able to hit their peak form, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we're especially seeing it from the year 3 guys. I mean, Todd Golden, I think, is the perfect example of, hey, he's used the NIL that Florida has to offer and the portal to really cultivate and mold his team exactly down to a T and how he likes it. You know, McCausland obviously at Texas Tech in year 2, and you got a number of different head coaches that are in year 2, year 3 that are really starting to make the waves happen right now. And, you know, a lot of these fresh, you know, brand new head coaches, outside of Mark Pope, who's been great, Dusty May, who's been great, I think a lot of these guys are finding themselves in a job where they're trying to rebuild. They're trying to make things happen, but it's more so a process that these year 2, year 3 guys are finally hitting the stride of. And that's where I kind of think a lot of that dynamic lies is, you know, we're going to see a lot of ups and downs from those year 1 head coaches, and there's not very many that I would say are strongly solidified at this point in the season.
Yep, it certainly has been a little bit rough for a few of those first-year coaches, but I do think that it's a little bit of a matter of circumstance with some of these guys as well, because I'm still a little bit bullish on Louisville, and it's not necessarily that I've loved what I've seen out of Louisville, it's that I just hate what I'm seeing out of the ACC since really Duke, and I'll give a little bit of credit to Notre Dame. I think that with Marcus Burton coming back, they're going to look a little bit better moving forward, but I think that that's just a wackadoo conference out there in the ACC where it feels like outside of Duke, there's been a lot of disappointments, and that's a conference where I do think that gauging every single game individually is so important because those travel spots are going to be very key, and there's just really no team other than Duke that I really feel good about in that conference.
Yeah, and the issue that the ACC is facing right now is they performed really awfully out of their league in non-conference play, and so the only ranked win on an ACC schedule that you can pick up at this point in the season is Duke, and that's a very difficult one to grab. You know, they're sitting obviously at number 4, and they're arguably one of the best teams in all of the country. And picking up that win, you know, you're probably gonna have to get it at home, and you're gonna have to wait your turn because every single team is gonna get a shot. But there's really no other games that if you're playing a non-Duke team that is going to really pad your resume and build you up and kind of create national waves. And that's a real problem right now, I would say, for the ACC.
Yeah, there's no question about it. It has been rough for them. As joining me on the show, we do have Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the Rob's Best Bet show, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly the ACC is an interesting conference. And has there been a conference or two that you've really been taking a liking to? Because we're doing this just after the Sunday action. I personally have been loving the unders in the Metro Atlantic, and that conference has been treating me great. So I mean, shout out to the MAAC. They call it the MAC, just like the 1 with 1A. So I guess it's the return of the MAC to utilize that song there. But that said, has there been any sort of conferences, anything in particular that you've been finding a little bit more of an edge on that's been, shall we say, a little bit easier to figure out?
There's a number of great conferences right now, and I will say I think there's actually less kind of mid-major darling conferences that I'm in love with this season, but one of them that I'm very kind of enamored with night after night is going to be the A10. The reason why I say the A10 is just there's so many teams that have emerged this season, and even the bottom of that league has some teams that on a nightly basis can pick up a win. And when you have that kind of parity and the ability to pull an upset and a lot of, depth to your league, it makes for some really fun nightly matchups. I mean, I just bet on Richmond, who's sitting at 7-10 overall on Saturday, and they covered, and they played a great game against one of the best in the entire league, 13-3 Rhode Island. And that's kind of the tenor of this league right now. You have SLU, who kind of started the season slow. You have George Mason. You have Davidson, George Washington, VCU, Duquesne, who's starting to pick it up as of late. I just feel like on a nightly basis, that's one of those leagues that's kind of guaranteeing you great matchups night in, night out.
Yep, absolutely. The Atlantic 10, I think, is so much fun. And that's another one of those conferences where parity very much, it does spring up in that conference. And I think that the Mountain West is always interesting as well, because we've been seeing a lot of home underdogs being able to bark there because you've got a lot of big-time travel spots. You've got a lot of teams like Wyoming, Colorado State that play at elevation. And I think that those are the factors that can lead to really being able to find a nice profit in a conference, whereas the conference that I was alluding to, the Metro Atlantic, I like a few more road teams in that conference conference just because the travel, unlike out there in the Mountain West, unlike in the Atlantic 10 where you have a team in St. Louis who they have to go out to the East Coast so much, you've got pretty much none of that, and in some cases in the Metro Atlantic, you can take the subway to your game, and I'm not even kidding when I say that.
Yeah, a lot of these conferences really are just like a few states, and in terms of the travel, it's just like, it's all regionalized, so the road spots hit a little bit differently. The Big Ten, I think, is the most kind of drastic when it comes to, Oregon just played a couple games back to back out in the Midwest, and now they travel all the way back to the West Coast, and whoever, is the East Coast or the middle of the America type team that's going to have to go out there next. I just feel like that element that's at play in the Big Ten is way unique in comparison to all the other leagues. And, to your point, in the Mountain West, obviously it's a little bit of a down league this year just because New Mexico isn't ranked, Boise State isn't ranked, San Diego State isn't ranked, Nevada kind of shot themselves in the foot, and it's Utah State that's kind of carrying the water for the conference right now. But still, you and I both know we watch it on a nightly basis. Every time there's a Mountain West game, we're pretty much tuned in, and there's still a lot of talent. There's a lot of great head coaches and a lot of great games to be had the rest of the season, in my opinion.
Oh, there is no question about it. It is so much fun to look at that conference. As Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the Rob's Best Bet Show, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and there's going to be a lot of fun to be had on Monday, and I do need to get your thoughts on two teams that have been struggling out there in the Big Ten. That would be this UCLA versus Rutgers game, and right now UCLA is a 2-point favorite, but how do you gauge this one? Because with UCLA, we've heard the comments of Mick Cronin, him being, shall we say, unhappy with his team, to say the least. And then you've got a Rutgers team that right now, their star freshman and Ace Bailey along with Dylan Harper, they've been able to really carry the way. But for Harper, he's right now dealing with a little bit of an injury, has not been the same in the last 2 games. And with Harper banged up, this has been a Rutgers team that, quite frankly, has been awful.
And to your point on Rutgers, Dylan Harper is the guy that kind of goes through the whole offense and runs it and makes sure everything is going smoothly. And he's been in and out of the lineup and just can't really see the floor right now with that hobbled ankle. And that's killing Rutgers right now, honestly, on both ends, because on offense, they look like a disaster. It's kind of like, Ace Bailey, here's the ball. Can you just fire up a jumper and pray? And a lot of these jumpers from Ace Bailey are just not going in. They're not executing at the free throw line. And offensively, I think that's the shortcoming of this team right now, is they don't have that Dylan Harper to lean on. They don't really know what the answer is outside of him. And UCLA, a team that's been really getting pressed by their head coach to, hey, toughen up. Let's go ahead. Let's play UCLA basketball. We've got the talent to do it. And I feel like right now, in terms of, who's available, the health, and also at the point of which these teams are kind of in that middle of correction, I feel like UCLA is closer to being kind of complete or getting back on track than Rutgers is. And, they're laying points at the rack despite their struggles. I feel like that's telling. And I do think that UCLA is going to pull out a win there in the rack, which is so difficult.
And how big is it as well that UCLA has already played a few games out there on the East Coast? This isn't like some sort of big giant travel spot as well, because I feel like we saw that with USC a few days ago, knocking off Illinois. That's another one of those examples of a first-year coach in Eric Musselman where I think things are going a little bit better for them. But in terms of these spots as well, I feel like game number 2, game number 3 for these teams that either go from west to east or east to west might be a little bit more of an advantageous spot as well.
Yeah, and we've even seen it as the reverse as well, where if a team from, the East Coast or the middle of the country goes out west, they might struggle in that initial game. I think I want to say it was Maryland who lost at Washington and then played a great game on the West Coast the second time out. And that just kind of, I think, feeds into it is, initially with these travel spots, what we're learning is the front end of that trip might be a little bit difficult because of the jet lag, because of the jumping the time zones, because it's just kind of an unorthodox travel spot to be in during the course of a season. But once you're out there and you're starting to get comfortable. And that second and that potentially that third game is where I think these teams really do show themselves true to form.
Yep, absolutely. As Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the Rob's Best Bet Show, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and certainly not a lot of rambunctious action on Monday, but I do have to mention this team because sometimes best bets are a fade, and right now, one of the biggest fades in all of college basketball has been Minnesota. That ever since opening night where they covered that game against Oral Roberts, they have approximately one cover to their name. They're right now about a 15.5-point underdog against Maryland. Is it worth laying some of these bigger numbers when you do have a team like a Minnesota who's been a big giant fade? We've seen some of these teams come out and just give really bad performances. Is there a bounce back for a team like a Minnesota on Monday, or do you just continue to bet against them until further notice?
I feel like that big of a number at 15.5 is just indicative of what's going to happen. And, nobody wants to lay that in conference play, especially with a team like Maryland that in years past has kind of been like a middling Big Ten team. But I absolutely think this Kevin Willard squad is different and just kind of built to lay this kind of number. So I am totally fine laying 15.5. I think this is a 20-point winner for Maryland. If you look at the schedule as well and you look at Notre Dame, Boston College, Notre Dame at 7-9 is laying 11.5. That's another game that, we kind of know about the Marcus Burton situation. He wasn't healthy for a lot of the season, going all the way back to the MTEs and the non-conference slate. And I think Notre Dame is just such a completely different team with him in the lineup. I love laying that 11.5. I love laying this 15.5 with Maryland. And yeah, I'm going to be over a lot of these favorite numbers.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm even looking at this Furman versus Wofford game, and I feel like Furman might see a little bit of regression with their offense, but them laying 5.5 at home against a Wofford team that's been outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, I feel like that's another spot where it's nice to be able to lay a little bit of a favorite there too.
I actually think that line is suspiciously low because I don't know how Furman's not sitting at 7.5, 8.5, maybe even 9.5 in this game. For that reason, it's either going to be a stay away or I'm going to bite the bullet and try out Wofford, because I do feel like when a line is just dangling out there with a 14-2 Furman team that has had postseason success in the tournament over past years and is a national brand on a short slate, it's just one of those kind of gotcha lines that the books are kind of dangling out there, and I'm never sure really how to feel about those ones.
Those are always interesting spots as well. And have there been any sort of those trends that you've been noticing? Because I know that there's always the old unranked team at home against a ranked team on the road, with the ranked team on the road being the underdog, and it feels like that home team comes through time and time again. Are there any of those other sort of circumstances that you've been looking at throughout the season? Because I think that it is interesting that you bring that up with the Furman game.
There's a few different games that we saw this past Saturday. The way that they played out it was just very unique in comparison to past years at this point in the season. I look at Iowa State and how they kind of went on the road against Texas Tech in Lubbock and just looked the part of the best team in the country, and Kentucky going into, Mississippi State and just really kind of making it decisive. Even though it was a 5-point game, it never really felt like they were trailing in the second half and they were in firm control. Florida going into Arkansas, getting it done. Kansas going into Cincinnati. Houston going into Kansas State. It just felt like there was a number of teams that really just showed that although there is a home element at play, although it's hard to go on the road in college basketball, we're getting to that point in the season right now where things have kind of slowed down for some teams. There is that kind of that lower number. I'm going to be less prone to bet on the side of the home side for the upset, because I think a lot of these, big kind of solidified teams right now are really getting comfortable in the season.
Yep, I do think that they are finding their sort of sea legs. I do think that they're finding their comfort zone in general, because we always find our comfort zone on the podcast. When you're aboard Rob, you do a tremendous job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, Greg, always love hopping on to talk ball, and we've got a lot of more ball to talk about as the season goes on here. But for those who want to follow my bets on a nightly basis, you can do so on Twitter/X at RobDFB, and also on my YouTube channel, just my name, Rob Donaldson. And as always, Greg, I really appreciate having me on.
Always great to be able to get Rob on. He does a tremendous job looking at this great game of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Always great to be joined by Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. Did so once again today, so big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @unit_D1, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the Power Conference games first. That'll be 5 in total, and then the SWAC, the MEAC, the America East, Patriot League games. Those are going to be the games at the bottom. The Southland is going to be at the bottom as well. So how about if we do get things started with 881, 882 on the card. Minnesota, the state with the smallest drinks of the union, on the road against Maryland. Maryland, a 15 to 15.5 point favorite to on this game between 137.5 to a 138, and I'm a little late with Maryland. I did set them as an 18-point favorite with this Minnesota team. Has covered just 2 games this far this season. I like Dawson Garcia. He's been able to give the team 17 plus points per contest, throws in their 7 boards, and getting back Mike Mitchell no doubt helps out this backcourt, but they have been without all season long. Quite a few pieces, the main of them being Tyler Cochran, so that has been very much less than tremendous, and they just haven't been able to get a lot out of Femi Odekale on the offensive side of things. He does give you about 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists, north of a block, a steal per contest, so stuff's a stat sheet in that regard, but it's only giving you about 5.5 points per game. You've had Frank Mitchell down low only be able to give you about 3.5 boards per contest as well. It's a Minnesota team that's well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, but we've been noticing that they've been speeding up a little bit more recently, and the defense just has not been. They're giving up the 80 spot to Wisconsin a few days ago. As a matter of fact, this team has given up 80 plus points in, I believe, each of their last 3 games, so that has been less than amazing, and this is a Maryland team that has been able to ascend into the top 35 with regards to both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. The step-up games have not necessarily been great for them, but I would not consider this a step-up game. Derek Queen, Julian Reese are giving you 16 plus rebounds per game. It's a Maryland team that is still doing a really good job of being able to generate turnovers, top 20 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, albeit Minnesota only turned the ball over about 10.5 times per contest, but Celta Miguel is now shooting 40% from 3-point range, throwing their 11 points per contest. You've gotten good production out of Jacoby Gillespie shooting 42.5% from 3, 90% the free throw line, 14 points per contest. Maryland playing a little bit more up-tempo than they have in past years, within the top 155 with that regard, and with this Minnesota team, the way that they are defending the 3-point line, a little bit less than tremendous, as they're allowing teams to shoot in that neighborhood of about 34% from 3-point range. That's 214th in all of college basketball. So do you think that Maryland goes out there, gets the job done? Question mark is, does Minnesota do their part with this total? And I think the answer is no. I think that Maryland holds up defensively. So going to be willing to lay the number here with Maryland. Set them as an 18-point favorite. Made my total a 136. So also in on the under. 883, 884 on the betting board. It is Rutgers, and they're going to be playing us UCLA. UCLA does find themselves as a 2-point road favorite. 138 to 139 is the total, and I'm in on the under. Set my total 136.5. As long as this number doesn't move, I will most likely write this up, just because with UCLA, even though it's been rough for them last few games, their Big Ten road trip thus far has not gone their way, as they have yet to win a game on this road trip. They have still been a rock-solid defense. They're a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 225 with regards to total possessions per game. And for Rutgers, they've really slowed down over the last few games because they've been dealing with injuries. For Rutgers, they're actually a top 15 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game on the road, closer to 200th at home. You've got Ace Bailey along with Dylan Harper combining for about 39 points per contest, but you can tell that Harper is not healthy. He scored 0 points in that game against Wisconsin last week. He looked a little bit better a few days ago, so perhaps he'll be a little bit healthier for this game, but still in that game against Purdue, he had 6 points in 20 minutes, still just did not look like himself, and outside of those two guys, you do not have anyone else on this Rutgers roster that has given you north of 8 points per contest. You have seen Tyson Acuff be able to emerge a little bit more. He's been able to give this team about 4.5 points per contest, does shoot 38% from 3-point range, but overall Rutgers is outside the top 150 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. This is not the same team down low that they were a season ago, outside the top 150 with regards to rebound percentage, although Thon Somerville has been able to give you about 4 rebounds per game. And even though for UCLA their players might hate at this point Mick Cronin, you do have Tyler Bilodeau, who's giving you good effort, good versatility at 6'8", 15 points, 5 boards, forward, shooting 40% from three-point range. And Eric Daly, the Daily Show, is able to shoot 40% from the outside, 11.5 points per contest. It's a UCLA unit that does rank in the top 5 nationally with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Sometimes that leads to a little bit too much fouling, and as we know, going to the rack, it's a rough ordeal, but this team has also been a top 40 team with regards to defensive rebound percentage as well. You've been able to get quite a bit out of Kobe Johnson, who's supplying the team with 8 points, 3.5 assists, 2 steals, 6 rebounds per contest. Love what he's been able to show, and then the ancillary guards like Dylan Andrews, Sky Clark, they're doing their part as well. So I do think that this is going to be a rough state of affairs for a Rutgers team that is right now banged up with their star freshman, did semi-line at 4.5, willing to lay up to 4 with UCLA, and planning on writing up the under semi-total 136.5, 885, 886 on the betting board. It is Notre Dame. They play us to Boston College, and Boston College is finding themselves as a 10.5 to an 11-point underdog. Totals between 140.5, seeing as high as a 142, and I did set my total at 142.5, so you're at the 141.5-ish, which I'm seeing pretty much across the market. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over. It's a Boston College team that just, frankly, has not been able to do a great job defensively. They are outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and after Notre Dame last season had to play super slow, super controlled, they've got a little bit more of their style with Marcus Burton back. Marcus Burton missed about 5-6 games to that injury that he suffered out here in lovely Las Vegas, and in games where he's played more than 5 minutes in, he has scored at least 15 points in every single one of them. This Notre Dame team shooting about 36% from 3 points. They've actually shot it better on the road rather than at home, but top 75 mark in all of college basketball. Boston College hasn't been bad with their 3-point shooting on the road either. They're shooting about 36% from 3-point range. Like what I'm seeing out of Donald Hand, he's been the do-it-all guy for Boston College, throwing there north of 5 boards to go along with his 14.5 points, actually closer to 7 rebounds, and he's been able to shoot about 33% from 3, 90% the free throw line, so pretty efficient with that regard. Chad Venning gives you a block and a half per contest. Problem is, he really doesn't give you a lot down low. He and Elijah Strong have combined for about 9 rebounds per game. Roger McFarland gives you a little bit on the glass, but the ancillary scoring out of the backcourt just simply has not been there for the team. Meanwhile, for Notre Dame, you still have guys like a Brendan Shrewsbury who's been able to chip in there north of 15 points per game from 3-point range. He's been able to shoot about 37.5% from the outside. And Matt Loco, who has been really good coming in from Princeton, he has gone a loco. 10 points, 3.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds per game. It's a Notre Dame team that's actually been able to do a really good job on the glass as well. This is a top 125 team with regards to rebound percentage. Now, the one thing that Notre Dame doesn't do, generate turnovers. They're outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And they do get gashed a little bit on the inside, but they do a great job of being able to guard the perimeter, and with Chad Venning really not giving you a lot on the glass. I think that that's going to lead to a lot of good, clean possessions for both of these teams. I do think that as a result, you're going to have a lot of made threes in this game. I did set my total 142.5. I'm in on the over, just with Notre Dame's overall depth and the way that Boston College has not been guarding the outside. Throw in there the fact that you now have back in the fold as well Marcus Burton. I'm only taking Notre Dame in this spot as well. Set Notre Dame as 12.5 point favorite. Going to be one to lay the number, and I'm in on the 142 or less over. 887, 888 on the betting board. Elon is playing against Campbell. Campbell is an underdog of 8 points. It's on this game. It is 136 to 137, and I'll be writing this one up. I said Elon as an 11.5 point favorite. I am willing to lay this number. With Elon, they have been a very good defensive team, as they've ascended to being 56th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis when they're at home. And this is a Campbell team that is relatively slow in control, back outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game. They've actually been scoring about 19 points more per 100 possessions on the road rather than at home. That's been one of the biggest anomalies I've seen, as Jason said he's been able to give you about 13 points, 5 boards per contest, and now you've got Kobe Duggan, who's been able to chip in there about 11.5 points per contest. He's been coming on strong recently for this unit, but I mean, really, other than Caleb Zerline, you don't have anyone on the roster that shoots above 35% from 3-point range. It is a Campbell team that has been not really being able to get a lot down low, and especially defensively down low, it's been rough. In terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 335 nationally, their overall rebound rate outside the top 300 as well, and that's where Elon is going to be able to take hold. They've got a 7'4" big man in Matthew Von Coleman, who began his career over at St. Mary's along with Utah, and he has been a dominator. Nearly 3 blocks, 8.5 rebounds, 6.5 points per game. Sam Sherry throws in there 8 boards, 14 points per game, and at 6'10", he's shooting about 33% from 3-point range. Nick Dorn throws in there 16 points. He's been able to shoot 37% from the outside. Elon has allowed opponents to shoot less than 31% from 3-point range as well. And more importantly, on opponents' 2-point shots, they're a top 30 team in all of college basketball. They've done a really nice job down low. This is an Elon team that additionally, they've been one of the best teams at being able to generate second chances as well. For as bad as Campbell has been on the glass, this is an Elon team that, in terms of percentage of their missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound, this has been a top 25 team in all of college basketball. Now, Elon, a little bit down with regards to their three-point shooting more in that neighborhood, about 32.5%, 33% from three-point range. Usually, we're used to seeing this team being one of the better teams in all of college basketball with that regard, but at home, getting a offensive rebound on 41.7% of their missed shots. That is number 6 in all of college basketball. That should allow them to get the job done in this spot against a Campbell team that is looking to slow things down. Elon, they themselves outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, and I think that their defense going to take hold here. I did set my total at a 133.5 and on the under, and I'm going to be writing up Elon in this circumstance, made them an 11.5 point favorite. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games, 889, 890. Furman is going to be playing us for Wofford. Wofford is an underdog of 5.5 points. Tallest game is 140 to 140.5. When it's all said and done, I think that I'm going to rate this one up as well. Steph Furman as a 9-point favorite. Going to be one to lay the number entering into Sunday. Furman, number 83 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Wofford in road and neutral court games outside the top 300. And this is not a Wofford team that's going to be putting like any sort of ball pressure on you or anything like that. Wofford 330th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Wofford allowing quite a few open looks from three-point range. And this has been a Furman unit that has been able to do a nice job guarding from the outside, with Wofford losing Chase Comer prior to the start of the season, who last year shot 50% from three-point range. That doesn't help things out, as Furman right now number 31 in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, for Wofford, the big thing for them is that they do have Kyler Filowich down low, who's been able to give the team 8+ rebounds per game, so that'll be massive for them trying to be able to stay in this game. But this is a Wofford team that, despite the fact that they've got the best overall rebounder in this game in Kyler Filowich, and they are a top 75 team in the country with regards to rebound percentage, are still not necessarily the most effective team down low either. And then additionally for this Furman team, I do think that these guys like Cooper Bowser and company, Garrett Hine, will be able to combine for 10 to 10.5 rebounds per game. They're going to do a rock solid job of just being able to hold up down low, and that's all they need, because PJ Smith has been incredible around the backcourt. He's been able to throw in their 3.5 assists, 17 points per contest, shooting 46.5% from three-point range. Charles Johnson, who's been a little bit in and out of the fold when he's been out there, he's been able to shoot about 44% from three-point range. He's throwing in there at about 6'11", 7.5 points per contest. After he was dealing with injury to begin the season, he's back out there, and he should be able to give this team quite a bit of something. And then for Wofford, it's just all about what you're going to be able to get out of these ancillary cards to Corey Tripp, who's been really leading the way, 13.5 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest. And to the credit of Filowich, for a big man, he's been able to do all 3.5 assists per contest, top 10 in the country with regards to his rebounds per game. But nobody else on the team outside of Filowich gives you north of 3.8 rebounds per game. Dylan Bailey throws in there 11 points per contest, but what are you going to be able to get out of these guys like Jackson Silvilius and guys like that? I just don't think it's going to be a whole heck of a lot. So I do think that Furman does a nice job locking down here. Additionally, with Wofford, they are outside the top 360 in terms of their free throw shooting percentage at 61.8%. So I did set Furman as a 9-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Also did set my total at a 139, with the way that Furman has really locked down defensively, now outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game as well. So in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Furman. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502. Prairie View A&M is on the road against Arkansas Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff is a home underdog of 5 points. Donaldson game is 166.5. That's a Prairie View as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Undecided on if I'm going to write this one up or not, because it is a very high total, but I'm in on the over. I set my total at 172.5. You've got an Arkansas Pine Bluff team that is just absolutely gunning it. This team is in the top 30 in terms of total possessions per game, and Prairie View not shy to run either. This is a Prairie View team that, in terms of total possessions per game, they're within the top 75 in the country. And for Prairie View, they entered in the weekend dead last in the country in terms of rebound percentage. Arkansas Pine Bluff, they're going to give you a lot of second and third chances as well. For Pine Bluff, they're right now checking in well outside the top 350 themselves, but for Arkansas Pine Bluff, they've got the doctor. Dr. Bradley, who's been able to give this team 65 points in 2 games since he has become eligible. He was a former top 25 junior college transfer, according to JUCOrecruiting.com. He actually began his career over with New Mexico State. He was part of that whole hazing scandal from a few seasons ago. He's come in and he's been able to give this team a whole lot of production, but you take a look on the flip side for this Prairie View team, and you've got a lot of guys that have been able to step up, like Tanaj Petaway has been able to give you 14 plus points per contest. Nick Anderson has been really good as well with being able to supply this team with north of 18 points per game. But with Nick Anderson right now dealing with a little bit of an injury, last time we saw him was on Christmas, but all these other guys have been able to step up. Jordan Tillman, who he was a star over at Florida A&M a few seasons ago, is giving you about 9 points per contest. Braylon Bush has come over from Northwestern St. He's been able to give this team a little bit of this and that as well. And Anderson was actually your top rebounder as well. So that should lead to even more second and third chances in this game. It's a Prairie View team that as a whole shooting north of 35% from three-point range, going against a Pine Bluff team that is right now towards the bottom of all of college basketball in terms of three-point shooting percentage defense. Prairie View is allowing opponents to shoot 37+% from three-point range as well. I think that despite that injury, you're going to get a high-scoring expose in this one. I'm going to be looking at writing up the over. If I don't write it up, I will still be on it regardless, but I'm looking at the over. And then at 6 or less, one to lay it with Prairie View. 306-503, 306-504. Mississippi Valley State plays us to Texas Southern. Texas Southern a 14.5 to a 15-point road favorite total on this game. It is 132 to 132.5, and with Texas Southern, I made them a 17.5 point road favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. This is not a Texas Southern team by any stretch of the imagination is really that great in any facet whatsoever. They are outside the top 275 in points allowed on a per possession basis. Typically, this is a good rebounding team, and Kenny Hunter is right now the lone guy on the roster that's giving you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. Texas Southern is 354th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and yet they're still way better with their offense than Mississippi Valley State. Mississippi Valley State is right now scoring 7.4 points fewer per 100 possessions than the next worst offense in all of college basketball. For Mississippi Valley State, they've been able to get a little bit more of something going when they've been at home because they played pretty much all their games on the road. That's just the nature of the beast when it comes to these SWAC teams who have to try to fund all their sports via these bye games. But for Mississippi Valley State, you just don't have a lot to really be able to hang your hat on. Arthur Tate is the lone double-figure scorer, being able to give you about 10.5 points per contest. It is a team that's also in the bottom 10 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are in the bottom 5 with regards to rebound percentage as well. They don't generate a lot of turnovers. They turn the ball over 16.5 times per game as well. And for Texas Southern, you've been able to get a little bit more from the outside as well. It's been a disappointing season for Jalen Jackson Posey when he was over at Stephen F. Austin a few seasons ago. It was about a 44% three-point shooter. This year shooting closer to about 32.5% from the outside. But Zaire Hayes has been able to give the team 10 points. He shoots 41% from 3. Kavion McLean, if he's able to get to the free throw line, shoots 96% there, 14 points per contest, 4.5 assists. It's a Texas Southern team that's starting to cut down a little bit on the 13.5 turnovers per game. Less than a tremendous start to the season for them, but I do think that with Texas Southern, as they do seemingly every single year, I do think that they're going to ratchet things up now that things are in conference play. We've seen this out of Johnny Jones time and time again. I do think that with Texas Southern, they just flat out outclass a bunch in Mississippi Valley State that, other than Alvin Stradek, they don't have anything down low. And I do think that you're going to see a little bit more moving forward out of these guys like Kobe Granger, Grayson Carter, guys besides especially Carter at 6'10", who's only giving you about 3 rebounds per game. I think that he's going to be able to up his play. And Mississippi Valley State, right now, staring at what I think is by far the worst team in all of college basketball. This time I told 133.5 since going into conference play. Mississippi Valley State has been a little bit better with regards to their offense, and I think that they're going to give it up to the Texas Southern team. So in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 17 points here with Texas Southern. 306-505, 306-506. It is Alcorn St playing us at Alabama State. Alabama State is a 1.5 to a 2-point road favorite. Total game between 143 to a 143.5. Did set Alabama State as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Alabama State is actually a top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and this has been an Alabama State team that has been relatively solid with their 3-point shooting north of 34% from 3-point range. And for Alabama State, they've got a nice consonant there in the backcourt in the coach's son, in TJ Madlock. That is the son of Tony Madlock. He's done a nice job giving the team double figures, throws in their 3+ assists per contest, and then CJ Hines along with Amar Knox have been able to give you between about 14 to 14.5 points per game because Madlock, for his career, shoots less than 30% from 3-point range. Hasn't done a tremendous job there, but he does a nice job of getting the ball to those guys who have really been able to help this offense ascend. And for Alcorn State, they're right now a team that's outside the top 3 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Things have gotten a little bit better for them. Marcus Tankersley is right now giving you about 8.5 points per game at Detroit a few seasons ago. He was a 14+ point per game scorer, and Keontae Cornelius has thrown in there about 10.5 points per game, but just don't have anything down low for this team. Dijon Benoit has been able to give you about 6.5 or so rebounds per game, but he's the only guy in the roster that gives you north of 4.3 rebounds per game. The overall versatility of Amari Hamilton has been okay. He's been able to give the team about 9.5 points, or is in there a little bit over 4 boards per contest. It does shoot 34% from 3-point range, albeit Alcorn St had a really, really rough start to the season, and that warped their metrics just a little bit. I feel like they're playing a little bit better than what is showing through there, but they're still allowing opponents to shoot 36% from 3-point range. They're still getting bludgeoned on the glass. They just cannot find clean looks as well. In terms of percentage of their shots that get blocked, they're in the bottom 5 in all of college basketball with that regard. The 14 turnovers per game, that's been a little bit less than tremendous, and even though we have seen a little bit of a step back with this Alabama State team is still the better defensive outfit as well in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're currently clocking in about 327th in all of college basketball, but it's also an Alcorn State unit that's 358th with this regard. I do think that Alabama State going to be able to run some good, clean offense. I do think that they find a way to get the job done on the road. I did set my line at a 3.5, so going to be willing to lay the deuce. And in terms of total, did set mine at a 145.5. I do think that this game has the possibility of some late game fouling to be able to help out with that total as well. So I'm going to be in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Alabama State. 306-507, 306-508. It is American, and they're on the road against Loyola, Maryland. This is a classic pick'em game, and your total on this game is between 137 to a 137.5. And with American, I did set them as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to back them in this spot. Loyola, Maryland has actually been able to do a relatively solid job with their 3-point shooting defense. They've been a top 100 team with that regard, but I do think that for American, the big key for this team is being able to do a little bit better job on the glass. Right now, they're about 325th in the country with regards to rebound percentage. They were a top 150 team 8 seasons ago, but this is the Loyola Maryland team that they've been able to do a nice job there with having Milos Ilic be able to give you 14 points, 8.5 boards, 3 assists per contest. The problem is he leads the team in every one of those categories, and for Loyola Maryland, they just have not been able to get a lot out of their backcourt. They're turning the ball over 13 times per contest. They're shooting 30.2% from 3-point range outside the top 275 with that regard. Braden Speed has been able to give you about 3 assists, 9 points per contest. He's been able to step up for the team. And Jordan Stemke, he's come in as a sophomore. He last year shot 41.5% from 3-point range and on higher volume. Last year gave you only about 5.5 points per game. He's up to about 13 points per game this season. But that said, he's only now shooting about 32% from 3-point range. And this is an American team that they certainly can be had from the outside. American as a whole, they're outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But even though Loyola Maryland does a relatively solid job down low, what have you, this is still a unit that at home they're outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and American has a lot of searchability with Mark Rogers coming in at 6'9", give you 16 points, 5.5 boards, shooting 39% from 3-point range. He's going to be able to match up very well with Ilic, and then Elijah Stevens, Colin Smalls in the backcourt. They've been able to combine for 5 assists, 2 steals, 21.5 points per contest. With Smalls coming up big, shooting about 35.5% from 3-point range. American does a little bit of a better job of being able to keep things clean in general, and we've seen this defense really be able to emerge for them as well. 64 points or fewer allowed in each of their last 3 games. If you look at regulation and regulation only, they still have been able to do a pretty rock solid job with regards to that offense as well, getting to at least 68 points in 3 of their last 5 as well. And this is a Loyola Maryland team that's now given up at least 74 points in each of their last 5 games. It is an American team, though, that is outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. Not as if this Loyola Maryland team is going to be looking to run it and gun it either in terms of total possessions per game, about 225th. So I do think that things are going to taper off just a little bit with regards to the offense, but at a 137, I think that you get just enough here for an over. I set my total 137.5, so by the hook, I'm in on the over because Loyola Maryland just has been giving it up very much down low in this game, and I think that American going to be able to win from within with Mark Rogers. So I do like American. I'll ride on the money line in the spot, and I'm going to be looking at the 137 over. 306-509, 306-510. Another game that I wrote up as Coppin St is on the road against Howard. Howard does find themselves as a favorite of 13 to 13.5 points. 145.5 to 146.5 is your total, and wrote up the under. Big reason why is that Coppin St is right now 230th in the country in terms of total possessions per game and 360th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Actually 362nd. They are 3rd worst in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You've been able to have Toby Ndozi be able to give you about 11 points per contest. He has become their main scorer after it was looking like earlier in the season that was going to be Darius Ward. He's been out the last 12 games, and there's no signs that he's going to be able to return whatsoever for the Coppin St team. They've been able to get a little bit more down low. Julius Ellerby, Jonathan Dunn, they've been able to combine for a little bit over 10 rebounds per game, but this team flat out can't shoot. They shoot less than 37% from the floor, 67% at the free throw line, 27.8% from three-point range, and I think that they're going to have it taken to them down low by a Howard team that they've been able to do a relatively okay job of finding some stretchability. Howard is outside the top of 285 with regards to their rebound rate as well, but Blake Harper is going to be the best player in this game. 18.5 points, 6.5 boards, 3.5 assists for the star freshman who at home is right now shooting 44% from three-point range. Howard has actually slowed down their tempo quite a bit. They're now outside the top 125 in terms of total possessions per game because they've been dealing with an injury to Bryce Harris, who last year was one of their top scorers with about 16.5 points per contest. So they've had to mix and match ever since then. Anwar Gill has good versatility coming in from LaSalle. 4 assists, 4.5 boards, 9 points per contest. And then you've been able to get 43% three-point shooting out of Marcus Dockery, who's been able to give you 17 points per contest. And for this Howard team, they're shooting 41% from three-point range. They're also outside the top 310 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. So that does have me a little bit concerned with regards to this total. It is a Coppin St team that they're allowing it from three-point range. They're about 246th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Howard is 260th, but at home, teams are shooting less than 30% from three-point range against them. This has been a Howard team that has been, shall we say, suspect with regards to their defense. They've given up north of 80 points in each of their last 4 games, but we've seen them play Nick Mid-Tuck games against teams like Drexel, and this is just a Coppin St team that they have not been able to get out of neutral all season long. For Coppin St, this team has been able to exceed the 70-point plateau in just 1 game thus far this season. I don't think that they're going to make it 2. I do think that Howard is going to be able to just overpower them in general. I think that Coppin St just out of scoring to be able to hold in this game. I set my line at a 15. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and did set my total at 143, so with regards to right up in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Howard. 3-6-5-11, 3-6-5-12. It is Incarnate Word, and they play us at Nicholls. Nicholls has find themselves as an underdog of 2.5 points. Tonight's game, it is a 143, and with Nicholls, I did set them as an underdog of 3 points. So right now, seeing the 2.5, it's a max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. Incarnate Word has been one of your best 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. For Incarnate Word as a whole, they're shooting about 36% from 3-point range. They actually shoot just a skosh worse at home rather than on the road, as they shoot about 35.8% from 3-point range at home. This is also an Incarnate Word team that they're going to give up some looks from 3-point range. At home, they're allowing opponents to shoot 40% from 3-point range. That is a big reason why I did set my total more around about a 143. Right now, we're seeing that total at exactly a 143. I saw a few openers of more like a 144, and if we do go back to that 144 opener, I'd be in on this total under. And the big reason why I did set that total so low is that even though Incarnate Word is good with their 3-point shooting, even though they do give it up quite a bit from the outside, this is an Incarnate Word team that's one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. 344th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Nicholls, not as high-flying of a team as they have been in the past. This is a Nicholls team that they're still not playing at like a sales pace or anything like that, but more like 187th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for Nicholls, this team has been well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they are very prone to giving up a lot from the outside as well. This is a Nicholls team that, with regards to 3-point shooting percentage defense on the road, it's right around about 250th in the country. They're allowing opponents to shoot 35+% from 3-point range, and I really like the way that Incarnate Word has been able to bring in some new life with this team as they bring in the backcourt of Ball State from a season ago, as Jalen Anderson has given you 13+ points per contest, dishing out north of 5.5 assists per game, and then Davion Bailey has been your go-to scorer, shooting north of 40% for 17.5 points per contest. Throw in there a good freshman in Jaden Smith, who's able to give you 6.6 boards per contest, and they should be able to play relatively even up on the glass with Nicholls, who has some versatility. I like what I'm seeing out of Jamal West, about 10.5 points, 5.5 boards, a block and a half per contest, but really doesn't give you anything from 3-point range. Michael Gray Jr. has been able to throw in there about 9 points per contest when he's been out there, as he's dealt with a little bit of ailment, but shooting 37.5% from 3. Nicholls as a whole, though, they only shoot about 31.5% from the outside. This is also a team that, while you don't have a lot of outside shooting, they're just not really going to be able to dominate this game down low either. Nicholls, with regards to their overall rebound percentage, 272nd in all of college basketball. And Incarnate Word, not necessarily monsters of the midway down low, but they're about 160th. I do think that Incarnate Word going to be able to win from within. The Brian Miles injury still taking a lot of hold for Nicholls. He was the top rebounder at Prairie View a season ago. We have not seen him since Thanksgiving, and with Nicholls also deal with Ike Cornish being out of the lineup, they've had Rayon Ireland be in and out of the lineup as well, though he should be good to go in this one, as given the team 14+ points in 4 of the last 5 games. I do think that Incarnate Word gets the job done. Did set my total 143, expect a low possession game. I'm in on the under, and I do like Incarnate Word, willing to lay up to 2.5 with them. 3-6-5-13, 3-6-5-14. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin plays us to Southeast Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana is an underdog of 4 points. Tonight's game between 129.5 to a 131, and Made my total 126.5 in on the under. Stephen F. Austin right now a top 50 unit in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and one of the best 3-point shooting defenses that you're going to find as well. They are 32nd in the country, with opponents shooting about 29.3% from three-point range against them. Stephen F. Austin still a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And Stephen F. Austin, I'm not even kidding here, they are 364th out of 364 D1 teams in terms of their own three-point shooting percentage. They shoot less than 24% from three-point range as a collective. They shoot less than 60% from the free throw line as a collective. So even though I think that Stephen F. Austin does get the job done outright on the money line, I cannot lay it here. I set my line at 2.5 because of that late game free throw shooting. That's an issue. All Southeast Louisiana shoots more around about 73.5% at the free throw line. And Sam Hines Jr., I do think is the most versatile player in this game. 16 points, 7 boards, shoots 44% from three-point range. Southeast Louisiana as a whole, they shoot about 34% from three. Brody Woodbury has been pretty solid down low, giving the team 5 rebounds per game. And then you've been able to have Jakevion Buckley come on over from within the conference from Lamar. He's been able to give you about 4 assists per game. Now the Stephen F. Austin offense has been able to get a little bit better ever since they got the UMass transfer Keon Thompson into the fold. He's been able to provide the team with about 13.5 points per contest since he's come in. 3 assists. His 28.5% three-point shooting, sadly, is actually very good for the team. And then you've got Eniwana Atiboasiko, who's been able to give you about 7 boards, 10 points per contest. Love what I'm seeing out of him. They're still dealing with the injury to the Texas transfer and Chris Johnson, which that has been really hurting this offense, as Matt Heyman in the top 20 in the country in terms of turnovers committed on a per possession basis, but he has been able to generate 2 steals per game as well. And this is a Southeast Louisiana team that they turn the ball over about 14 times per contest. They're outside the top 275 in terms of ball security as well. So I think that this is going to be a very sloppy game. We have seen Stephen F. Austin very much throttle down their tempo, and this is a Southeast Louisiana team that they're not playing too up-tempo either. Southeast Louisiana about 200th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Stephen F. Austin, right now they are well outside the top 225, even though we've seen Stephen F. Austin play a few higher scoring games in the last few games as they've been able to break the 70-point barrier in 3 of their last 5 games. I think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog. I did set my total at a 126.5 in on the under, and at 4, going to be willing to take those points with Southeast Louisiana. 3 is 6-5-15, 3 is 6-5-16. It is South Carolina State. They play host to Maryland Eastern Shore, and the Shore does find themselves as a pretty sizable underdog in this spot of 13.5 to 14 points. Balance game between 144 to 144.5. Set my line at 13. Here at the 13.5 to 14, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Maryland Eastern Shore. Now, for Maryland Eastern Shore, it's been a less than tremendous season for them, especially on the defensive side of things. They are well outside the top 325 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for the Shore, they only shoot about 29% from three-point range, but I love what Casey Shaw brings to the table. He actually followed Cleo Hill on over from Winston-Salem State as pretty much a package sort of combo deal when Maryland Eastern Shore was doing their coaching search, and he's been one of the more underrated mid-major players that we've seen in the country. 18.5 points, 6 boards, 3 assists per contest, leads the team in darn near every major category, and has really been able to do a nice job of being able to flow some good offense. Now, he does turn the ball over a lot. He has given up 4+ turnovers in each of the last 4 games, so this is a South Carolina State team that legitimately has been okay with their defense as they're taking a whole greater than some of its parts approach. You've got 2 guys that average double figures. Omar Krosky has been able to give you 10.5 points per contest, and then Drayton Jones, he's your main low post presence, 13 points, a block and a half, 5 rebounds per contest, but have a team that as a whole, they shoot about 35% from three-point range, and for this bunch, they've been able to do a relatively solid job on the glass as well. As for South Carolina State, in terms of their overall rebound percentage, they're ranking about 225th in all of college basketball. When you take a look at the rest of the MEAC and SWAC and the HBCUs in general, I mean, they've been one of the better teams with that regard. South Carolina State, 122nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and you've been able to get a little bit more out of the backcourt from Mitchell Taylor from a facilitation standpoint, 2.5 assists per contest, and they've been able to have a step-up go-to scorer in Wilson Dubusky, who's been able to shoot about 42.5% from three-point range. It's a Maryland Eastern Shore team that's allowing you to shoot well north of 45% from three-point range. And for the Shore, against D1 opponents, because they played against quite a few non-D1 teams that have really warped their numbers, really other than their game against Wagner, they have been giving it up to just about everyone thus far this season. Other than the game against Wagner, Old Dominion is the only other team to fail to cross the 75-point barrier against them. So I do think that you're going to get some up and down freneticness, but this has been a South Carolina State team that they themselves have been able to step to the plate with regard regards to their defense. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. I did set my total here at a 145 here at the 144.5. I do think that South Carolina State does their part with this total in on the over, but I do think that with Maryland Eastern Shore, having Casey Shaw in the backcourt, giving you what he's giving you, and having some of these other ancillary pieces that are able to give you something like you've got Christopher flipping down low, giving you about 5.5 rebounds per game. That's pretty flipping good. Cardell Bailey has been able to shoot from three-point range about 37.5%. He's given the team 9+ points in 3 of the last 4 games. I think that you've got just enough with Maryland Eastern Shore with them being able to do a nice job of being able to find some three-point shooting to be able to hold in this game. So I am going to be willing to take north of 13 here with Maryland Eastern Shore and in on the over as well. 3-6-5-17, 3-6-5-18. Morgan State is going to be playing against Norfolk State. Norfolk State finds themselves laying about 9.5 points in this spot, and throughout this game, you're going to be getting it in that neighborhood of a 155 to a 155.5, and I did set my total 156.5. I'm in on the over for this Morgan State team. They are outside the top 320 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this has been a Norfolk State team that has been leaving something to be desired defensively as well. It's gotten a little bit better for them as things have progressed throughout the season, but there was a point where they were giving up 80+ on the regular in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Norfolk State still about 186 in the country, so they've been giving it up a little bit there. And for Morgan State, they do have some nice three-point shooting as they've got Winston Tabbs. He used to be a star scorer over at Boston College. He's been able to give the team 15+ points per contest. He was banged up towards the early part of the season, but he's been able to come back and he's been able to give the team quite a bit of production. Norfolk State a little bit stronger along the perimeter rather than down low. As for Norfolk State, really Jalen Myers, he's the only guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. And for Norfolk State, they are allowing opponents to shoot only about 31% from three-point range on the road. Goes for about 35% for three-point range at home. We should see that iron out a little bit more. And for Norfolk State, I do think that you're going to see a little bit of regression with their own three-point shooting from Brian Moore Jr. along Christian Ings. These are your top 2 scorers. They're combined for 32 points per game, and they're combined to shoot north of 54% from three-point range. They're giving you about 6.5 assists per contest as well. That's not going to be going into a funk. And Sincere McMahon shooting less than 30% from 3, 6.5 points per contest. See a little bit of positivity coming there as well. But for this Morgan State team, they just time and time again have been getting absolutely gashed. This team has given up 86+ points in each of their last 5 games. It has been such a less than tremendous effort that it's not even funny. And if you look at games against Division I teams, because they have played against a few non-D1 teams as well, other than that slobber knocker that they played against Towson, that was 64-60. Ever since Thanksgiving, they have given up north of 80 points in every single one of their games, and against E1 opponents, they've given up at least 75 points in all but 2 of their games thus far this season. But Cameron Hobbs does provide you with about 14 points per contest, shoots 34.5% from 3, and Will Thomas shoots 48% from 3-point range. He's been able to notch about 13.5 points per contest as well. This is the Morgan State team that very much lacks lackadaisical on the glass. Even though Norfolk State doesn't have anyone other than Myers down low that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, they should still be able to win the battle there. Norfolk State about 266 in the country with regards to rebound percentage. That's still better than what you're able to get out of Morgan State, who at home, they're outside the top 250 with this regard. So I did set Norfolk State as a 10.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 10 there. Did set my total at 156.5, so you're at the 155. I'm also in on the over. 3-6-5-19, 3-6-5-20. NC Central plays host to Delaware St. Delaware State is a underdog of 4.5 to 5 points. Total on scheme between 147 to a 148, and with NC Central, made them a 4-point favorite. So here at the 5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Delaware State. It is a Delaware State outfit that is ranking outside the top 200 both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. But I love what I'm seeing out of Robert Smith right now, because Martez Robinson is the heart and soul guy for the team. He's able to give you 15 points. He's able to give you 6 boards. He throws in there a few assists. He does a little bit of everything. But Smith has been an unexpected surprise, has been able to give the team 36% 3-point shooting, 16 points, right around about 3 assists per contest. Really love the way that he's been able to emerge, and it's a big reason why Delaware State has been able to be as lively as they have been in a lot of these games. For Delaware State, they have now been able to cross over the 75-point barrier in 3 of their last 5 games, and this is an NC Central defense that isn't quite what we're used to seeing out of them. For NC Central, they do a relatively solid job around the outside. They're a top 160 team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Where they truly get gashed is down low. They're not really generating as many turnovers as they have in past years. They still do an okay job there, but they're 326th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, because they're well outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Po' Boy King has been able to give you 16.5 points per contest. He and Keyshawn Porter have been able to combine for 3 steals per game. Porter has been able to give you about 11.5 points per game, and he's your main 3-point shooter. He's shooting 43.5% from 3-point range, but for NC Central. That departure with their defense is very big, and you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. As a result, NC Central right now 316th in the country with regards to rebound percentage. Delaware State more around about 251st. They're not amazing on the glass, but Olsen Andrews provides about a 6'10" frame. He's been able to give this team in the neighborhood about 4 rebounds at a block per contest. Corey Perkins has been a nice 3.5 assists per game sort of facilitator as well. And it's a Delaware State team that they keep things relatively clean. They do turn the ball over 12 times per contest. NC Central should be able to generate some turnovers there, but it's an NC Central team that also has been a little bit hot and cold with regards to their offense as well. We saw them held to 61 points to begin the year over at Coppin St. And for this Delaware State team, they themselves have had a tough time with their defense, 75 plus points allowed in 4 of their last 5 games. So interesting little scenario here. I did set my line at 4, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Delaware State, and did set my total at 146. I do think that things get a little bit sloppier with regards to turnovers, and Delaware State does a solid job on the glass. So in on the under and in on the points with Delaware State. 3-6-5-21, 3-6-5-22. Grambling plays us for Florida A&M. A&M is a underdog of 7.5 points. So on this game between 132.5 to a 133. And with Grambling, I did set them as a 9.5 point favorite. Going to be willing to lay the number for Grambling. And it's been a less than tremendous effort from them on defense recently, as they have been overall for the season outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But they were in the same exact spot last season with their defense. Really rose up in conference play. I do expect a lot more of the same here, and they get to go up against the Florida A&M team that has been outside the top 330 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. And they brought in Patrick Crary, who was over at St. Thomas at the NAIA level in Texas, because he always preaches the little things, but just doesn't have the size to be able to implement the high amount of rebounding that he's looking for. Jermaine Charles does stand about 6'11". He's been able to give the team 4 boards per contest, but still not necessarily trustworthy of minutes. Sterling Young, who comes over from Charlotte, has been able to give the team right around about 13 points per contest, and to his credit, he's been able to shoot about 37% from 3-point range. As for Florida A&M, they're now shooting as collective about 32.5% from 3-point range, but getting completely blowtorched on the glass. They're a bottom 20 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, so that means a lot of second and third chance opportunities here for Grambling. And Grambling was dealing with an injury a little bit earlier in the week / last week to Antoine Burnett. Their top scorer has been able to give you 13 plus points per contest, but he's all cleared. He's all good to go for this one. You additionally have been able to have Mikhail Stevenson throwing there about 4.5 assists per contest, and that's a big thing for Florida A&M. Roderick Coffey and his 2 assists per contest, that right now leads the way. And Shakir O'Neal, that's actually the son of Shaquille O'Neal, he only gives you about 3.5 rebounds per game. He's not making too much like his father there. He's actually shot about 35.5% from 3-point range. Jordan Chapman does shoot 45% from 3-point range. This has been a Grambling team that's been a little bit vulnerable from the outside, but the bigger thing for Grambling is taking care of the ball. They're, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, outside the top 325 in all of college basketball, and this has been a Grambling team that has allowed opponents to shoot about 36.5% from 3-point range, but this is also Florida A&M team 355th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. But I do think that, once again, Grambling, a team that's outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, looking to slow things down. I think that they're going to ratchet up their defense. I think that that's at the core and the identity of Florida A&M as well. So I did set my total 131.5. It goes against the metrics a little bit, but I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to hunker down with their defense, and Grambling does a better job of executing that and gets a little bit more of Antoine Burnett in the post. So did set my line at 9.5. I'm willing to lay with Grambling, and on the under set my total 131.5. 3-6-5-23, 3-6-5-24. Southern is playing against Bethune Cookman, and Bethune Cookman does find themselves as a small underdog in this case of 4.5 points. So on this game between 136.5 to 137, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Bethune Cookman. I did set them as a 2-point underdog. I really like what I'm seeing out of these transfers that have all been able to mesh together quite well. Your main guy has been the Rhode Island transfer, and Brayon Freeman, who's come in. He's given the team 17 points, 2.5 assists per contest. It is a Bethune Cookman team that sometimes gets a little bit out of sorts with regards to turnovers, a little bit over 13 per contest, but you've been able to have Trey Thomas be able to give you 12.5 points. He's right now shooting 40% from 3-point range. And for Bethune Cookman, they're one of the few teams in this conference that has been able to give you a lick of defense. I'm not going to call it amazing defense by any stretch of the imagination, but they're right now about 162nd in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This is a Southern team that is back in the top 75 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they are also 344th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And Tajani Diobasi, he was the main point guard of the team from the season ago, and in the first about 8 games that he was able to play, he was giving the team nice facilitation, 9.5 assists per contest. He's been out though last 7 or 8 or so games, so that means that you've been looking a lot more to the ancillary pieces in the backcourt. Michael Jacobs has had to step up in a big way and has been able to do so from a facilitation standpoint. He and Jordan Johnson combined for 20 points. You're able to get about 3 assists per contest out of Jacobs. Meanwhile, Johnson shoots about 35.5% from 3-point range, but and a nip and tuck spot for Southern as well. They shoot 65.5% of the free throw line. That's outside the top 300 nationally. Southern does not have a single guy on the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, and that's indicated by the fact that their overall rebound percentage, you're right now clocking in well outside the top 215 with that regard as well. And it's a Bethune Cookman team that, while they do leave a little bit of something to be desired, Daniel Ruzon, he comes over from Weber State. He's only been able to give the team about 4.5 rebounds per game. It's a Bethune Cookman team that I do think that they're going to be able to hold up on the glass. For Bethune Cookman, they're actually a pretty even up team with regards to rebound rate when they're at home. On the road, this has taken a big giant departure, though this is why they're outside the top 300 with that regard. But Reggie Ward has been able to give the team 8+ rebounds per game. Meanwhile, AJ Barnes on the flip side for Southern, he only gives you about 4.5 rebounds per game. And Bethune Cookman, with their defense, fewer than 70 points allowed in 3 of their last 5 games. Lone exceptions came against Mississippi State and Davidson, 2 rock-solid offenses. And for Southern, give them a little bit of credit as well. The team has been able to ratchet up their offense. They've gotten past the 80-point plateau in their last 2 games. So, good old situation of something's got to give. Did semi-total 138, like what I'm seeing out of this Bethune Cookman defense, but I do think that in the end, you do get a game that's close enough for late game fouling, and Southern has really been giving it up from the outside. So, in on the over, and I'm going to take the points with Cookman, 306-525, 306-526. UT Rio Grande Valley plays host to East Texas A&M. The total on this game is 147 to 147.5, and Grand Valley is a 12.5 to a 13-point favorite. Going to end up writing this one up as I did set Grand Valley as a 15.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, but I'm actually going to be writing up the over in this spot. I set my total at 153.5. You've got a Grand Valley team that's in the top 100 with regards to total possessions per game, and this team has been a top 130 unit in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Both of these teams outside the top 245 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and both of these teams outside the top 315 with regards to 2-point shooting percentage. And that's big because East Texas A&M, one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country at 28.7%, but they also take one of the lowest percentage of field goals that come from 3-point range. So most of their shots, they come from inside the arc. They very much don't take a lot of these threes. So I think that that's going to be big in this game. You've got Josh Taylor comes over from East Tennessee State, who's been able to give the team 4.5 rebounds per game, but he was expected to give this team a little bit more, and it's a Texas A&M Commerce team that is right now outside the top 300 with regards to their overall rebound percentage. UT Rio Grande Valley be able to do a really solid job from 3-point range for this UT Rio Grande Valley team. They're one of the top 50 teams in the country in terms of percentage of their field goal attempts that come from 3-point range, and right now for the East Texas A&M team, they are outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And for this Grand Valley team, on the road, they've been shooting about 33.5% from 3. This actually dips to about 26% from 3-point range at home, but I do think that that's going to iron out, and that's going to be going northward with KT Ramey, the transfer from DePaul, being able to give you 12.5 points per contest. I also just think that there's going to be no answer whatsoever to Hassan Abdul Hakim. He's a 6'8" combo player that's right now shooting 34% from 3, 13.5 points, 7.5 boards, 3 assists per contest. Was out for about 4 games earlier in the season, and you saw their offense take a little bit of a dive while he was out. They bring in also guys like Cliff Davis, DK Thorne, who have been able to combine for 24 points per contest, and Davis has been able to shoot about 36.5% from 3-point range. It's an East Texas A&M team that has now given up at least 75 points in each of their last 4 games, while you've got a team in UT Rio Grande Valley that they're certainly having their difficulties with regards to their defense as well. Now, when it comes to going up against non-D1 teams, they've been pretty rock solid with regards to that defense, but against the actual D1 teams, they have given up 73 plus points in each of their last 5 games, and they've given up at least 73 points to all but one Division I team that they played thus far this season, actually 2, Tennessee Tech, along with Stephen F. Austin. So I do think that this is going to be a game that gets cranked up and down. I do think that Grand Valley going to be able to exploit a leaky East Texas A&M 3-point shooting defense. I did set my total 153.5. I'm in on the over, and with Grand Valley willing to lay up to 15 with them. 306-527, 306-528. It is Alabama A&M, and they're on the road. They're facing off against Jackson State. Jackson State is a 9.5 point favorite. Total on this game 141, and I did set Jackson State as a 12.5 point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Alabama A&M outside the top 330 in terms of discipline and in terms of fouls on a per possession basis. It's also an Alabama A&M team that's only shooting 29.2% from 3-point range on the road. That's outside the top 275 nationally. And for Alabama A&M, they're just really not getting anything right at this point in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are 329th in all of college basketball. And this is a Jackson State team that I think is going to be able to rise up now that Deshaun Ruffin is back in the lineup. He's a former McDonald's All-American that was a starter over at Ole Miss a few seasons ago. Has just dealt with a lot of injuries in general, but even with him a little bit banged up when he's been out there, he's been able to give the team double figures. And additionally, they should have the best low post player in this game, Romeo Manciel, who's been able to give you 7 rebounds per game. Now, Chad Moody on the flip side for Alabama A&M, he's been able to give you a double figure amount of points, so it's in their 5 rebounds per game, but for Alabama A&M, it's pretty much a whole greater than some of its parts approach. They've got 10 different guys that see at least 12 minutes per contest, but really not a lot of them other than Moody give you a lot of rebounding. They're outside the top 300 in terms of rebound rate when they're on the road. Jackson State, they leave something to be desired as well. They're 322nd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound percentage, but for Jackson State, even though they turn the ball over 15 plus times per contest, their offense is still smoother than Alabama A&M, who turns the ball over 16 times per game. And Alabama A&M, they specialize in getting to the free throw line. They shoot 64.7% at the free throw line. AC Bryant has been able to give you 12.5 points, 7.5 per contest, but because their games have so many fouls in there, they have to rely upon their free throw shooting, and it's just not very good at this point. Darius Ford, who comes in from TCU, has been able to give you about 3 assists, a 7.5 per contest, so they've been able to do a relatively okay job with that regard, but it feels like Jackson State really getting things going. They started out the season 0-13. Since they've gotten Ruffin back for the start of the new year, they've went 2-0, and they even very nearly knocked off Cal Baptist as well, since Ruffin has been back in the last 3 games, 72 plus points in each of those last 3 games. Meanwhile, it is an Alabama A&M team that they themselves have been able to get past the 75-point barrier in 3 out of their last 5 games as well, so I do think that there's a propensity for some good scoring in this one. I did set my total as a result at a 150.5. I'm going to be in on this total over, and with Jackson State, I'm going to lay up to 12 with them. 306-529, 306-530. It is Lamar. They play us in New Orleans. New Orleans is an underdog of 13.5 to 14 points, and total on this game, you're going to be getting it at a 142.5 to a 144, and with this total, I did set mine at a 148.5. I'm in on the over. You've got a New Orleans team that time and time again, they're one of the more up-tempo teams in all of college basketball. They've seen a little bit of a tick down from being in the top 35 each out of the last 3 seasons, but still playing relatively fast. They're still a team that in terms of total possessions per game, they're about 59th in all of college basketball, and they're still outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a Lamar team that they've taken a little bit of step back with regards to their tempo, about 213th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but they are a far more clean offense, a top 175 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And you've had Alex Mamayoles, who's come over from the junior college ranks, really be able to be the star scorer for this team. 15.5 points per contest, 2.5 assists, shooting 39.5% from 3-point range. And it's a Lamar team that as a whole, they shoot about 34% from 3-point range, and in terms of percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound, they've actually been one of the better teams in all of college basketball in this regard, and they should be able to have their way in this one as they're going up against a New Orleans team that's well outside the top 275 with regards to their rebound percentage. You've been able to get a lot of production with regards to the backcourt from James White, who's been able to give you 15 points, 7.5 boards, comes in from UAB along with Ole Miss, and then Josh Short also come up big for this team as well, as he's right now supplying this team with about 10 points, or is in there 4.5 rebounds per game, but really past that, not a lot of production. Michael Thomas has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game, but team only shoots about 29.5% from 3-point with this Lamar team. In terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, they have been a top 100 team in all of college basketball in that regard. They should be able to dominate here with Alex Hamilton being able to give you a little bit over 6 rebounds per game. Additionally, the backcourt has had some really nice facilitation as well, so you've got Mamayoles, who's able to give you a few assists, but that really helps out Deshaun Jackson, who's been able to give you 4.5 assists, throws in there only about 1.9 turnovers per game. It is a New Orleans team that has just been getting blowtorched with regards to their defense. 86 plus points allowed in 4 of their last 5 games ever since Christmas, and you take a look at this New Orleans team against D1 teams and D1 teams only, they have given up north of 73 points in all but 2 of their games this far this season, where they gave up approximately 73. Every other game, they have given up 74 plus. It has been very much less than savory with that regard. I do think that Lamar going to give up a little bit more here as well. It's a Lamar team that they've been able to get past the 70-point barrier in 2 out of their last 4 games ever since Christmas as well. And this is a team that we've already seen them give up a 100 spot in the month of December as well. So this is a circumstance where I did set my total at a 148.5. I'm in on the over, and with Lamar, I'm willing to lay up to 16 with them. 306-531, 306-532. Texas A&M Corpus Christi is going to be playing us Northwestern St. Northwestern St is an underdog of 9 to 9.5 points. Total on this game is between 142 to 142.5. Seeing a straight 8.5 out there as well, but would be willing to take it with Northwestern St regardless. I did set them as an underdog of 6.5 points for this Corpus Christi team. They're a much better 3-point shooting team than they were a season ago. Last year, they were a bottom 50 team in all of college basketball with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. Now they're about 78th in all of college basketball, but the Northwestern State team has been able to do a nice job job of being able to hunker down and play much more slowly. They're outside the top 300 with regards to total possessions per game, and not that Northwestern St is amazing with regards to their defense. They're about 316th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they've been able to keep things just a little bit more out in front of them with Addison Patterson, a former top 100 recruit of Oregon, along with Nevada, giving you 10 plus points, 5 plus rebounds per game. So he does a nice job of just being able to give you a lot on that front. Now for Northwestern St, one of their main kryptonites is the fact that they do allow opponents to shoot north of 37% from 3-point range. So this Corpus Christi team should be able to find a lot of open looks from 3-point range. But this is also a Northwestern St team that's doing a little bit better job of being able to generate turnovers. They're getting about 12 per contest. You've had John Sanders come on over from Coastal Carolina, give the team 11.5 points, throws in their 2.5 assists per contest. And then Micah Thomas, I like what I've been seeing out of him. He's shooting 37% for 3, while Sanders actually shoots 39% from the outside as well. And for Northwestern St, they've been able to flow some much better, more clean offense. The 13 turnovers per game has been a little bit rough, but they've been able to ascend into the top 250 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. I do think that they're going to be able to hold up on the glass as well, as you've been able to get right around about 6 points, 6.5 rebounds per game out of Willie Williams for this Corpus Christi team. While they do a nice job of being able to generate turnovers, they're a top 100 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They themselves get sloppy with it. They've been turning the ball over about 12 times per contest, even though the 3-point shooting has been rock solid. They also have been giving up quite a few looks on the offensive glass as well. This is a team that overall is a top 125 unit with regards to their rebound percentage, but even though their 3-point shooting percentage is good, they also are in the bottom 50 in the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3. So even though they hit their 3s, they don't necessarily take a lot of them. Isaac Williams has come back into the backcourt. He's been able to give you 12.5 points, 4.5 assists per contest. So I've been loving what I've been seeing there, and Gary Clark is back up to about 7.5 or so rebounds per game as well, but I do think the Northwestern St going to be able to slow this game down, get a little bit more of their tempo, and be able to hold in this game, as I do think that both of these teams going to commit quite a few turnovers. I did set my total at a 140.5, here at the 142.5 in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Northwestern St, and we'll wrap things up with 3 of 6, 533, 3 of 6, 534. Another game that'll write up. Houston Christian plays us to McNeese. McNeese does find themselves as a favorite of 14 points on the road, and the total on this game is between 137 to 138. Did set McNeese as a 15-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Houston Christian has actually been a top 10 team in the country with regards to cover percentage. That said, I'm going to be writing up the under. Both of these teams are outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, with having this Houston Christian team outside the top 340 when they're at home in terms of total possessions per game. And this is a unit that doesn't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. So those second, third chance opportunities, they just simply are not going to be there when you have to go up against Joe Charles, who's been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. Christian Schulmate has been rock solid for this McNeese team as well. And that's where I do think that they're going to be able to blow them away. It's a McNeese team that they are a still top 85 unit with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And even though you got Julian Mackey give you about 15.5 points per contest, Elijah Brooks has been versatile for this bunch as well. Comes in from North Dakota with about 10 points, 4.5 boards, 2.5 assists per game. It is a Houston Christian team that still is shooting less than 31.5% from 3-point range. Has been much better when they've been at home, but they've been facing off against much lesser competition than what you're going to be finding in this game with McNeese, with having Sincere Parker sincerely giving you 14.5 points per game. But McNeese has left a little bit of something to be desired from downtown as well. They're only shooting about 32% from 3-point range. I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be very much tamed down. I do think that for Houston Christian, big reason why they've been able to cover so many games is just because they've been flat out catching so many points, and do think that rubber meets the road a little bit more here against a McNeese defense, 37th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. So circumstance where I set my total 131 in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with McNeese, and that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @JDUN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via the 5-star review, and coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and out season. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
New Balance Hoops is changing the game with a roster built for the future. Darius Garland, Tyrese Maxey, and Zach LaVine push the pace, while Cooper Flagg is set to be the next #1 pick. Cam Brink is raising the bar for women's basketball, proving that impact goes beyond the court. Whether it's the Hezzy Low V2s for quick cuts, the two-way V5 for all-round play, or the Kawhi 4 for those who never stop climbing, New Balance Hoops makes shoes built for every player. Visit newbalance.com/basketball to explore more.